All right. Dr. Rumki Majumdar joins me on the broadcast. She's an economist at Deloitte, India. She's with me here in the studio. Good to have you, Rumki, with us. We've had 24 hours to be able to dissect the budget, and some of the fine print is now more visible than what it was. The one thing that I take away, this is a show where we are unabashedly focused on our $10 trillion, $30 trillion roadmap. That's why the show is called India Ascends. Does this become a catalyst, the budget 2026 become a catalyst for India's ascent?
Absolutely. If you see the last 5 years, the India has been taking calls to ensure that it deals with the crisis at hand. It was pandemic. Right after that, it was an oil crisis. Right after that, it was a geopolitical crisis. Last year, it was like an all-round impact on demand and exports. So it was like moving from crisis to crisis. I think this year, the government has taken a step back, realized that there is a lot of resilience in the economy, and now it's time for it to take a call on what are the necessary steps that needs to be taken so that the long-term growth at 7% can be sustained.
So the charge that has been leveled is that there is incremental stability, there is incremental progress, there is fiscal prudence, but where's that game-changing transformational reform?
No, if you look at all the measures that has been taken, and if you look at the kind of measures, these are all supply-side measures, by the way. Be it ease of doing business, because they have kind of brought in customs reforms. They have ensured that many of those custom duties on essential goods that supports the growth of strategic manufacturing sector, those costs are cut down. Many of the systemic issues, some of the procedural issues have been eased out. Stress on strategic and frontier manufacturing sector, that is something which is very much needed right now, because we are seeing a lot of headwinds our way, especially in technology, and also the fact that we have one of the highest tariff on our exports.
So do those things get... So this was a budget that came in for the first budget after Trump tariffs, the first budget after we signed FTA deals, the first budget also after Operation Sindoor, where we were very clear that military indigenization of our defense is now a national security requirement.
Absolutely.
Do you think those three buckets were checklisted with this budget?
Not only this budget, even the previous budget, because the tax exemption was announced much earlier. The Trump announcement happened, right? And I think the government just didn't wait for the budget. They have been taking measures through the year. GST happened at a time, even though GST is not a part of budget, but it happened at a time even middle of the year. So they are bringing in reforms when required, not wait till the budget. This budget is where they realize we have a domestic resilience. Now is the time to move to a supply.
So one thing that the budget, a lot of it actually happened last year. You had the income tax cuts, you had the GST cuts, all of which ensured that people spend more money. And when people spend more money, that actually leads to a larger economic cycle getting, increased further. And India is a consumption-led story.
Right.
And now let me ask you this one question that many have been asking, that in terms of our fiscal prudence, it is again, many said that we could have probably done more. And, there are some critics who say at this rate, it's going to take us decades to actually meet our goals that we should have met a decade ago. The 3.4%, the 3.5% as far as the FRBM is concerned. We are still at 4.3%. That's the target.
Correct.
And that's the aspiration.
Right. See, if you notice, we were around 9.2% of GDP 5 years back.
No, we were in the COVID year. It was a COVID year. That was an exceptional year.
Agreed. Yeah. And from there, the minister announced and promised she will bring it below 4.5, and she did it, 4.4. Now she's making it gradual because there are challenges on the revenue side. We have gone for tax exemptions. We have gone for GST. So it's going to impact, especially this year. Revenue growth and GST is likely to be negative this year. So in that case, it's all about buoyancy, how quickly the economy activity can grow. And remember, private sector still hasn't picked up. It still remains modest. So till then, the government has to step up. And if you look at there was one very interesting question.
So why hasn't the private sector picked up? You speak to the industry. I was speaking to some CEOs yesterday. They gave a lot of numbers. They said that 90% of whatever capex is happening now is now being led by the private sector. 14 large projects, all of it is being led by private sector, so on and so forth. So when you hear that side of the story, they said, up to private sector is doing heavy lifting. When you see the other side, it says, no, it's the government that has to do the heavy lifting. And that changes the overall finances and the financial math of the country.
Correct.
What is it that is really the big pain point that hasn't been addressed by the for the corporates?
For the corporates, I think the cost of doing business, the ease of doing business through the procedural easings, something for the services and the GCCs. So clearly on the data centers, clearly they are ensuring that global MNCs come here and invest, because one of the reasons why we are seeing a bit of a weariness is that global uncertainties are weighing on minds. That's why you're seeing FIIs and FDI flights, right? So clearly we have
Has that been addressed? It was about $18.5–19 billion. Has that been addressed?
So the FDI, right? Yes. So clearly, see, many of the measures on strategic sectors, manufacturing sectors, GCCs, all these are measures to tell them, plus the fact that the government said we will not criminalize, we will.
I think that's a huge message. That's a huge message.
Yes.
And if you ask me, it was a very regressive step to begin with. The way the criminalization actually started, that happened about 5 years back. This was in the first term of this government itself when it started. Reversing that is a very positive move, because in the first term it shouldn't have actually happened. That was a very unfair move on honest taxpayers. But in your assessment, that one thing that you think, that one measure, that one announcement that you think really stands out in the budget? And then I'll tell you mine.
Okay. Yeah. So, see, coming from a consulting background, so I think the safe harbor measure was good. It kind of gives a lot of clarity on what taxes to be paid, which bracket you fall in, whether you sign it, whether you get into the APA agreement or not. So that gives a lot of clarity. And second will be the data centers. Clearly, there is a lot of opportunity. We are depending on foreign infrastructure to get our demands met. That's not fair. We really need to build our own infrastructure, and that's where I think the measures that have been taken is fantastic.
I think for me personally, this time around, there's been a lot of focus on jobs. For a country which adds 12 million people every year to the workforce, jobs plus skilling. And if the government gives an update about the apprenticeship scheme that it launched last year, that actually would also give us a sense of whether we are on the right direction or not. One final word before we wrap this, Rumki, in your assessment, that one particular aspect that you would have ideally wanted this budget to address, but probably didn't get so this year?
I don't think so. We have, because we had more or less 4 demands. One on MSMEs, which been addressed. On tier 2, tier 3 cities being addressed. I think R&D is something which I think more could have been done, because see, at the end of the day, now it's all the game of moving up the value chain, be it manufacturing or services. So clearly, the only way we can do is spend on R&D, and India has one of the least in R&D spending as a percentage of GDP. So I think that's where
education as a percentage has remained stagnant. That's
very
disappointing.
Stagnant, yes.
Especially for a country that actually produces a lot of STEM graduates and could do so even more.
But then they took a measure for encouraging women in STEM. They said it requires long hours, so let's have a hostel for women.
Yeah.
So there's small bits, measures being taken. But we have to understand one fact. India has resource constraints. If it has only so much of resources, it only can allocate for certain priorities. This time the priority is on long term, and maybe they have looked at health, they have looked at skilling, you've said jobs, they have looked at strategic sectors. I think that's something which is
so personally for me, the one thing that I would have liked probably more in this budget would have been some focus back on that urea subsidy, and rejigging that, and because it's not just about a subsidy, it's an impact on the ground as well, the soil, the fertility, all of it is getting impacted.
Right.
That rejig, if the policy makers had focused on, would have been a big message. But anyhow, all in all, thanks so much, Dr. Rumki Majumdar, for taking out the time and speaking to
Thank you so much for having me here.
Great.
Pleasure talking to you.